I think if there's one thing I would love to be able to get across to people, is that morality is, in principle, ultimately is something we develop, and we tune our religion to fit the morality we have. I mean, we don't need to believe in God to be good, obviously.
No, yeah. But I was doing Bible studies, and my brother was 11 years older than me, so I was about 8, and he was about 19. And he came in, and he looked, and he said, "Why do you believe in God then?" And my mum went, "Bob." And I knew she was hiding something.
Oh.
And I thought, oh, what's that? And I thought, yeah. And then I started thinking about all the things I'd been taught versus all the things in science I'd been taught. And I thought, yes, of course. It's just like Santa. Some people don't want to know the truth because it doesn't fit with their...
Well, that's one of my big problems with much of organized religion, or some of I have a lot of different problems with it, but one is this notion that you don't want your kids to know how the world really works for fear that they'll lose their faith. We don't want to teach them. We don't want them to learn anything because they might change their faith.
But then there's another level of why as well, because they think that losing their faith is equated with badness.
Yeah.
So, and some people genuinely believe that you won't go to heaven if you don't believe. So they think they're doing a good thing.
Yeah,
I'm saving my child from hell.
Yeah. Well, I think when people do. Most of the times when people do bad things, they're actually thinking they're doing a good thing. They have a rationalization for it. I mean, the extreme is the parents who don't let their kids get blood transfusions for religion. I mean, they're not trying to kill their kids. They think they're doing the right thing. And that's the problem,
I mean, that's one of my favorite forms of evolution, people who refuse.
Yeah. Natural selection. The Darwin Awards. Yeah, exactly. As long as they refuse.
Not for their kids, obviously. That's the shame, that that is child abuse.
Well, we want them to refuse before they have kids.
Well, exactly. We want them to refuse for themselves as an adult.
Yeah, we want to make sure they don't reproduce. But that's part of the problem. I've talked to someone else we've talked to, Noam Chomsky, and he used to say that with me that he didn't care what people believe; it's what they do that matters. But the problem is what you believe affects what you do. So when you have these crazy beliefs, like I'm doing are you a favor by not allowing you to have a transfusion? I ultimately do silly things. And so that's the reason, it seems to me that's the reason to be grounded in reality at some level, because you don't do silly things.
Of course, yeah. But he's right as well. If people just believe silly things, it's not a problem. It's when they act on them.
Yeah, but
I've never had a problem with spirituality or people believing in any god or whatever, or witches and warlocks. Yeah. But if they start infringing on my rights to play out their fantasies, then that's when I've got a say in it.
Yeah, but I know, I agree. But I guess my problem is that no one's an island. I mean, so inevitably, if you have these crazy beliefs, you have kids or you have neighbors, and you impact on others, and so at some level that...
But we should say that most religious people are normal. They just happen to believe in God, and we think they're wrong. I've often said if nice religious people, normal religious people...
Church of England types.
Well, they know the bits to ignore in the Bible, and
they pick and choose.
So they don't need the Bible. If you know the bad bits from the good bits, you don't need it. And we that's what we call extremists and fundamentalists. They're the people who believe the bad bits in their holy book as well.
Yeah, they don't realize that if you took, we used to, if you took the Old Testament literally, it's a horrible thing, and people complain about Islam and Muslim, but if you took the Old Testament and stoning, but people always pick and choose what they want to. There was a survey done.
People choose their own religion.
Yeah.
If they don't like a bit in their religion, they modify it, and it's a new church.
And exactly.
This one can drink and eat bacon. That's my religion. Yeah. This is my religion. Yeah, exactly. Also, not so much nowadays, but there's modern sects popping up all over. But the ancient ones were definitely made by the people in charge to better themselves, just like politicians today stitch up what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
It's you create your morality. If you're in charge, you create morality that's right for you.
Exactly, and make sure everyone else does it.
Of course, yeah.
But it's there was an interesting survey done in the UK, which was asking people in the census. One of the good things about the census was for the first time, I think almost 50% of the people said they didn't have a religion or they weren't members of the Church of England, and they asked people why. why do you say you're Christian? Do you believe in transubstantiation or the Virgin? And people would say, no. And they'd say, well, why? And they'd say, I like to think of myself as a good person.
Yeah.
So for most people, being religious just means, you know, they've co-opted morality.
And it's a shortcut. And that's why they pass it on to their kids, because they think they're, you know, I've said before, you know, my mum was, she was mildly religious. Again, C of E religious.
Yeah.
Go to church, and you're a good person. You're a respectable person. And usually, you know, for a working class mum, Jesus is an unpaid babysitter.
Yeah.
If I can't watch you, he can. And you take that for a while, and it's fine. I don't think it's particularly harmful outside academia. But. Then you realise that it's just not true. Even if you look at the stats of religious people in prisons to atheists, but you know, it doesn't add up. You know, and morality predates all religion. You know, we got on before we had to make the rules.
You can really see what Ricky Gervais and Lawrence Krauss are getting at here. They're not attacking people. They're pointing out how religion trains us to fear truth. Think about it. Some parents refuse to teach evolution because they're scared their kids will lose faith. But evolution isn't an opinion. It's one of the most proven facts in science. We have fossils, DNA evidence, and over 150 years of research since Darwin's On the Origin of Species. And when Krauss talks about parents denying blood transfusions, that's real. Groups like Jehovah's Witnesses still forbid it, even for children. Every year, kids die from preventable conditions because someone thought faith mattered more than biology. In Matthew 18:3, Jesus says you must become like little children to enter heaven. But how twisted is it to use that verse to justify letting a child die? Gervais is right. Most Christians already ignore the violent parts of Scripture. Deuteronomy 21 literally says to stone rebellious children. Leviticus 20 calls for killing anyone who curses their parents. People skip those verses because morality comes from empathy, not God.
I think if there's one thing I would love to be able to get across to people, is that morality is, in principle, ultimately is something we develop, and we tune our religion to fit the morality we have. I mean, we don't need to believe in God to be good. Obviously. And I'm actually.
I think even religious people believe that.
Yeah.
I think they know that.
But, you know, so there's a friend of mine, a physicist, Steve Weinberg, who won the Nobel Prize, but he's an atheist. And he said, I'll paraphrase him, but he said, so there are good people and bad people. Good people do good things, bad people do bad things. When good people do bad things, it's religion. It's interesting because you can motivate yourself because of a belief that somehow there's a divine right to do something.
Well, of course.
You know, you're burning people or you know, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's not always the case, but it certainly can motivate you to do bad things and justify it because of what you're told. Because, you know, that's the purest form of brainwashing.
Yeah.
When you're a kid, your brain's a sponge, and your parents tell you, don't go near the fire, don't go near the spider, don't go near the thing. If you do that, you'll go to hell. What? And if it's laid down, you know, and they know it's equated to all those other things that are true and observable, and you know, you shouldn't go near a lion and all that sort of stuff. And if you're never, you know, when you're 8 years old and you say, is there really a Santa? Parents go, no, don't tell your little sister. But they don't do that with God sometimes.
Yeah, it's really
because they think it'd be bad for you to be an atheist in society, and in some places it is.
Yeah, it's
a rule of survival.
Yeah. I mean, in spite of the problems, we're just lucky we can even have this conversation.
Of course,
for most of human history, we couldn't have even had this conversation and walked out of the room alive.
It's my only thing I can hold on to, that I'm oppressed.
Yeah. Well, it's
there's 13 countries I can't even visit.
Only 13.
I'm oppressed.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, well, it's nice. We all got to feel like victims.
Luckily, I don't want to go there anyway.
Yeah, that's probably.
They're the 13 countries I don't want to go to. So it's worked out really well.
Do they have Netflix in those countries? Or no?
Yeah. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, you know, but it's interesting, and I've said this, and you know that. In some sense, teaching religion to kids is child abuse because, and I just learned a quote the other day from the Archbishop of Canterbury, who said, "Educating children is like engraving in stone. And it's really hard to outgrow because the kids aren't. I mean, that question is a deep question ultimately, and a kid,
it's not even that it works.
Yeah,
it's that you were given to it as truth when
before you could think about things, and it was you learn it here, rather than there, and it's and I remember it was actually Richard who alerted me to this. I'd never thought of that. There's a picture in the paper he showed of at Christmas time of 4 little kids. And it's really sweet. It says a Muslim kid and a Jewish kid and a Catholic kid and a Protestant kid, and they're all playing together. And you say, hold on a second, a 3-year-old. It's like, that's not a Catholic kid. That's a 3-year-old. It's like saying it's a neoliberal kid, a deconstructionist kid, and we label them, and that becomes their reality.
Faith schools and exactly.
So you were as far as I was reading, you were 8. You went to church till you were 8, and then do you make a decision not to go at that point?
No, I still went. I went because I got paid for being in the choir. Till I was about 14. I just kept it quiet that I was an atheist. Okay. I'll take the money.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm not an idiot. But atheists got to earn.
Yeah. That's right. Atheists have to eat like everybody else.
Exactly. Yeah. No, and I remember the moment as well. I believed in God just because I thought everyone did, and that was it.
Yeah, sure. Me too.
And everyone around me said things like, "It was on the telly everywhere. It was God. Of course there was a God. It made it all brilliant." Right? I was still I knew about evolution and all those things. And, I just thought he just started it. He did it. Fine.
Yeah, sure.
There was no real. There was no
cognitive dissonance.
No, exactly. Yeah. And I think I liked Jesus more, because he was a bit of a superhero. I liked him because he was kind, and he
he could walk on water,
and he did things.
Yeah.
He helped people. I thought it's cool.
Yeah.
Cool. In fact, I liked him more. I liked his human half more than his God half. I don't know the rules, so I don't want to offend anyone.
Yeah. You don't?
No. But I was doing Bible studies, and my brother was 11 years older than me, so I was about 8, and he was about 19. And he came in, and he looked, and he said, "Why do you believe in God then?" And my mum went, "Bob," and I knew she was hiding something.
Oh.
And I thought, what's that? And I thought, yeah. And then I started thinking about all the things I'd been taught versus all the things in science I'd been taught, and I thought, yes, of course. It's just like Santa.
Yeah. I mean, so you had the moment. For me, it was just kind of a, I'd like to believe, and I want, and then I just the stories started seem a little wilder and wilder, and it was like Santa. Eventually, it just seemed like it was unlikely to be true. It wasn't a cathartic moment. It wasn't an epiphany for me. It was just sort of a
no.
But you had an older brother that had that influence.
Yeah. So he
did your mom? Was your mom? When did you come out to your mother?
I think it was just easier then. I don't think I did. I didn't particularly talk about it because it just wasn't talked about. It wasn't a big deal. You went to church because it was the centre of the community.
I was a cultural Jew, and my mum the same. It's the same thing.
Exactly. It's not. It's everyone's a bit lax. It's everyone I know had to find a church to get married in.
Yeah.
Because they hadn't been.
I'd like to say that my search for religion ended when I found someone who would marry us. And my wife is Catholic.
It wasn't religion. It was a club.
Yeah.
It was like a club that you had to get through to get married and out of a christening, and it was a social occasion. It wasn't. No one really thought. I mean, some people did, but.
What I love about this part is how clearly Krauss and Gervais show that morality and belief aren't the same thing. Krauss mentions physicist Steven Weinberg's quote, "Good people do good things, bad people do bad things. But for good people to do bad things, that takes religion." History proves that. The Crusades, the Inquisition, witch trials, all acts done by people who truly believed they were serving God. Exodus 22:18 literally commands, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." That one verse justified centuries of torture and murder. And Gervais is right, belief gets planted early. Telling a child they'll burn in hell for asking questions isn't love. It's psychological conditioning. Studies from Oxford and the Pew Research Center show that children raised without religion tend to score higher in moral reasoning and empathy tests because they learn ethics through cause and effect, not fear and reward. When Gervais recalls realizing that God was like Santa, that moment matters. It's the same realization billions of people have when they finally start thinking for themselves. Religion works by inheritance, not by evidence. But truth doesn't need inheritance. It just needs curiosity.
You know, and I think that more and more, if you ask people what they really believe in, you know, people have found this thinking that agnosticism is a polite term.
Yeah.
And I try and explain they're not mutually exclusive. One deals with knowledge, one deals with belief.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So,
in fact, I just edited an old book about atheism, and this guy said, you know, atheism is unscientific, which is, but agnosticism isn't. But the point is, I hadn't appreciated till I read this particular book, and I wrote a foreword for it, that agnosticism is atheism, because agnosticism is just saying the evidence doesn't convince me. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not. It's not sufficient to make me believe.
I don't believe.
Yeah, and that's a form of atheism.
And faith people saying I don't know, but I believe anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And I think the mistake comes when people say that atheism is unscientific, is because they think atheism means I know there's no God.
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to I don't believe in any of your gods so far.
Yeah.
But convince me. I get tweets, if they proved God existed, would you believe then? I go, well, of course I would.
Yeah.
And it would be the greatest scientific discovery ever.
Exactly.
Everything else, forget everything else. Don't give the prize anymore. Don't give that's the one. That's it. It's done.
Yeah, it's done.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I always say, people say, what would it take? I said, tonight the stars realigned.
Yeah.
And said, I'm here. It didn't have to be in English. It could be in Aramaic, you know, whatever.
Ironically, atheists would all believe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But all the other religions wouldn't, because it'd be the wrong God.
Yeah, exactly. The wrong God. Exactly. No. That's just, yeah, exactly. It's like NASA. We never landed on the moon. It's really fake. They did that just to do that. You know, so your mom has always been fine then with, I mean, I guess she had to tolerate you because she
just hoped that we didn't get killed in a barroom fight and did okay.
Yeah.
And it was all about the kids, you know, just be nice and don't die. That was it.
Be nice and don't die. That's a great thing.
That was it. And so they use anything.
Well, it worked on you.
They use anything.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's the same here, but there was a study done of about 2,000 adults of and atheists were just the word were less trusted than anyone except for rapists. I mean, they were on par with
it was joint bottom with rapists in America, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was and it was just sort of sad. It's that notion of that.
It makes me laugh that they think atheism is extremism because you don't believe in any God.
Yeah.
Whereas believe in one.
Yeah, exactly.
Choose one.
Yeah.
Don't be an extremist.
Yeah. I mean, you know By the way, what you said in the Unbelievers, the things you said, I thought were the best things we got. But it was exactly that. As you said, it's just one extra God I don't believe in, as you point out.
Exactly.
I think it's.
Well, we're born atheist.
Yeah. Exactly. We are. We're born atheists, and that's right. And unlike what my old friend Christopher Hitchens used to say about what he found so awful about at that time about religion was it said you're born ill, but you're commanded to be well, and that notion. Whereas you actually didn't do anything wrong until you do it. You're not born having been.
It's also a very worrying trait.
Yeah.
For someone to believe that babies aren't innocent.
Yeah.
That's a bit worrying, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a bit sick.
Yeah. It's really sick, and unfortunately, I think it's probably traumatic for many kids. My ex-wife was a Catholic, and I remember the first time she went to church, and they told her that her soul was like a lung, you know, and it started out white, but you do all these, you know, sins, and by the time you're that age when she was going to go to confirmation, it was black, and you had to do these things to try and. It was just traumatic. It's traumatic.
Really scary.
It's really scary. I'm happy about that part about having grown up Jewish. At least there wasn't that stuff. I just got told that, you know, all these bad things happened, and we were.
But the Old Testament isn't that the first form of Judaism? Isn't that?
Yeah. That was, but it didn't. But there wasn't.
No. Of course, no one. Yeah.
The soul, hell, and those things. I never really heard about that when I was growing up.
Yeah. So the New Testament was trying to make it less Jewish, but
the irony is the Bible punishes that kind of curiosity. In Genesis 3, the moment Eve seeks knowledge, God calls it sin. Questioning is forbidden, yet every moral step forward, from Galileo proving the Earth isn't the center of the universe to Darwin explaining natural selection, came from questioning. And the contradiction runs deep. Christianity says God is love, 1 John 4:8, yet also commands, stone to death anyone who works on the Sabbath, Exodus 31:15. Judaism's Torah says an eye for an eye, Exodus 21:24, while Jesus later says, turn the other cheek, Matthew 5:39. It's moral confusion dressed as divine truth.
Yeah, for everyone else.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, all I got from the Old Testament is supposedly that, well, we're better than everyone else.
Yeah. Well, Jesus in my church looked like Brad Pitt.
Yeah, well, there you go.
White, blue eyes, blonde hair.
Yeah, blonde hair.
Yeah,
Really, there were a lot of those people in the
Middle East. It wasn't Middle East. He wasn't Middle East. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think enough. Well, we'll talk about. I want to talk a little bit about how
enough religion already.
Enough religion already. We've given it too much airtime already. But one of the reasons the concept of evolution is easy. I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's just a coin toss. But what people don't buy is the scale. The fact that they can do 100 years, maybe 1,000 years, but the idea of 1 billion years and the fact that things change so imperceptibly, that's the thing people don't buy.
It's like looking at one frame of a film and going, well, he's not even running.
Yeah.
Well, no, he is.
Yeah, exactly.
You've just looked at 24th of a second, but he is running.
And that's why but I think that's why it's not intuitive. And it's
I think even people that find it hard to understand. Was it Richard's model that if you look at a picture of your granddad, he looks a bit like you did it, and then eventually he's a fish.
Yeah.
Now you can,
and no point. There's no point where the child of a fish is not a fish. It's just and that's everyone thinks suddenly that you're going to have a child and it's a different species, and it just doesn't work that way. It's
exactly.
So gradual.
But then there's levels of stupid, because I get tweets. I've been watching the chimps in a zoo for 4 years now. And not one of them has. Really? Yeah. No. I remember testifying in Texas, and some woman said, my ancestor is a monkey," and I felt like saying, "Well, if anyone's ancestor is a monkey, I think." Yeah. I know. But the other one is, again, I used to be quite militant, and I used to ridicule people when they said, if we evolved from chimps, then why are there still chimps?
Yeah.
Now I answer it like it's an intelligent question.
Yeah.
I say we didn't evolve from modern apes, we evolved with them rather like cousins.
Yeah.
And it doesn't do any good, but it makes me feel better because I wasn't being nasty, I think.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, no.
Because some people do it genuinely and they think they don't get it.
Yeah.
They don't get it, and that's fine,
Well, I think it takes all types. I've talked to Rich about that too. I mean, sometimes you have to sort of jar people in order to get them to think about things. But I think you're absolutely right. Talking to people with respect, at least, is because it's not so much stupidity. Often it's just ignorance, and that's a big difference. It's people just have never been
different. Because we could say that intelligence and education is a bit of luck that we got there, and but people. Some people don't want.
The New Testament softened the Old, turning chosen people into everyone. But the bias never left. It's why, in most Western churches, Jesus is shown with blue eyes and fair skin. That's not history. It's cultural projection. The real Jesus would have looked like a Middle Eastern Jew, not Brad Pitt. And when they shift to evolution, you see the same pattern. Religion rejects it not because it's hard to prove, but because it challenges Genesis. The Bible says humans were created instantly from dust, Genesis 2:7, yet every fossil, every strand of DNA shows a gradual story billions of years long. It's not disbelief, it's data. Krauss explains it perfectly. People don't grasp the scale of evolution. They want a miracle, not a million generations of small change. But that's what makes reality beautiful. It doesn't need magic to be meaningful. So, what do you think? Can faith and evidence ever coexist, or are they destined to conflict? Share your thoughts in the comments. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell if you want more deep, fact-based commentary like this one.
Lots of Christians in America feel Christianity is under attack, and that Christians deserve special rights, including tax dollars to support private Christian schools. They want to require prayer in schools and sex education classes to teach abstinence only. Some have convinced states to pass anti-gay, anti-transgender, and anti-abortion bills.
I take the view that religious communities make a very significant contribution to our society. Not, and I would say we no longer just by trappings live in Christian societies in the West. Christianity in many ways has been decentered, which I would say is a good thing, but it has to move itself away from a position of privilege at the head of the table to take its place in a broader community.
Mixing politics with religion is fraught with danger. We all know theocracies where leaders govern by the will of an infallible God. Openly defying the correct faith is called blasphemy and leads to harsh punishments, even death. I think everyone should have the right to practice any religion or none, as long as they don't force their beliefs on others. I appreciate people whose religion inspires them to work on important social justice issues. In countries that are not theocratic, politics might still be infused with religion. My country, the United States, has a secular government with a problem of religion immersed in politics. I hold in my hand a godless document. It's the United States Constitution. Our framers established the first nation in history meant to separate religion and government. Authority rests with we the people, the first three words of the Constitution, not without the deity. The only mentions of religion in the Constitution are exclusionary. The First Amendment prohibits the U.S. Congress from making laws respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Article 6 prohibits religious tests for public office. That didn't stop some states from putting religious requirements in their state constitutions, including my state. I was a candidate for governor of South Carolina in 1990 to challenge the provision of my state constitution that bars atheists from holding public office. After an 8-year legal battle, I won a unanimous decision in the South Carolina Supreme Court, striking down this unconstitutional religious test requirement. The U.S. Declaration of Independence, which is not a governing document, does refer to a creator endowing people with unalienable rights. The Declaration was a call for rebellion against the British Crown to distinguish us from an empire that asserted the divine right of kings. Our founders were products of the Enlightenment, looking toward reason and evidence from the natural world. Many were deists, referring to nature's God, who set the laws of nature in motion and then retired as deity emeritus. Had they known about evolution and modern science, many would likely have been atheists. In 1954, American President Dwight Eisenhower signed into law the addition of the words "under God" to our Pledge of Allegiance to distinguish us from godless communists. This turned our secular pledge, recited daily by students, into a religious pledge. America is one nation under the Constitution, or maybe under Canada, but we're not one nation under God. Similarly, "In God We Trust" became our controversial national motto in 1956 at the height of the Cold War with the Soviet Union, replacing the more inclusive motto "E pluribus unum," Latin for "out of many, one." The Ten Commandments are another divisive issue. Many Americans who want them displayed in schools and courts either don't realize or don't care that the first commandment, "Thou shalt have no other gods," conflicts with the First Amendment, which guarantees the freedom to worship one, many, or no gods. Churches and individuals are certainly free to post the Ten Commandments openly, just not on government buildings. In 2016, Donald Trump became president in large part because of overwhelming support of white Christian evangelicals. Many are also white Christian nationalists who long for the olden days when their white privilege enabled them more easily to discriminate against those of a different race and those with non-Christian or no religious beliefs. These white Christian nationalists are trying to rewrite American history, claiming that the U.S. was formed as a Christian nation.
Religion and politics have always been a dangerous mix. History shows that when governments claim divine authority, reason and human rights disappear. During Europe's Middle Ages, questioning the church could mean torture or death. The same pattern appears in modern theocracies like Iran or Saudi Arabia, where laws come from religion, not evidence or human equality. Silverman is right that America's founders built a different model. The Constitution never mentions God. It gives power to the people, not to priests or kings. The founders came out of the Enlightenment, when thinkers like John Locke and Voltaire argued that morality and law should come from reason and experience, not revelation. Science has shown that natural processes, not divine intervention, explain life and the universe. Evolution, proven through genetics and fossils, replace the old creation story. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old, not a few thousand. No credible evidence shows a supernatural force guiding nations or politics.
On January 6, 2021, we learned just how fragile my country's democracy could be, as Donald Trump incited a mob of terrorists to storm our nation's capital in an attempt to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Many were inspired by their white Christian nationalism. Lots of Christians in America feel Christianity is under attack and that Christians deserve special rights, including tax dollars to support private Christian schools. They want to require prayer in schools and sex education classes to teach abstinence only. Some have convinced states to pass anti-gay, anti-transgender, and anti-abortion bills. Some also promote unscientific religious teachings like creationism in secular schools. Christians have a lot of influence over the U.S. government. The Republican Party succeeded in packing our Supreme Court with conservative Christian justices who in June will vote to overturn Roe v. Wade, a 1973 decision that legalized abortion everywhere in the U.S. Looking at countries around the world shows that religion and politics can make a terrible partnership, and when mixing the two, we often get the worst of both. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Professor Kaur?
Thank you. I think I'd like to take a slightly different approach in the topic of religion and politics. So I'm speaking from the Sikh perspective, both in my academic capacity, but also from personal experience. And I think when considering this topic, it's important to take into consideration lived experience. So I'm an anthropologist by background. And what I'd really like to do is to focus on actually the understanding of what we mean when we say religion, what we mean when we say politics. What we say in the Sikh faith is that there is not a separation of these two domains. It comes down to a fundamental understanding of what we define religion as, what we define politics as, and we don't see these as kind of conflicting domains in the Sikh faith itself. So I really want to draw attention to the way that we understand these concepts. So for example, in the Sikh faith, there is no term specifically for secular. So in the spoken language, there is no term for secular, there is no term for religion. We talk about dharam, which is this all-encompassing worldview. And so within that, all of these thoughts, mindsets, and beliefs are part of that. And when we talk about a divine or a god, we don't mean this very kind of Abrahamic definition of a god, and so this does not permeate the way that Sikhs practice and believe their faith. So I don't see this as being a fundamental issue for Sikhs in the way that they practice. Having said that, religion and politics have taken a more academic approach in general discourse, and what that means to say is that then they are set up as these two dichotomous realms. But what I want to go back to is where I started, this lived experience. How does that work for people in practice? How does that work for politicians? How does that work for religious scholars? When we talk about politics, are we talking about politics with a small p or a capital P? How are we defining these terms? How are we actually implementing these terms? And I think I'm going to leave my reflection quite short, because I think it's more interesting if we engage in a bit of conversation.
What happened on January 6th showed how religion can twist politics into something dangerous. People stormed the U.S. Capitol shouting prayers, holding crosses, and claiming they were defending God's country. That wasn't faith. That was fanaticism. It's what happens when people start believing their political side speaks for God. Studies after the attack confirmed it. The Public Religion Research Institute found that the strongest predictor of sympathy for the rioters wasn't party affiliation. It was Christian nationalism, the belief that America was chosen by God and should be ruled by Christian law. That mindset doesn't protect freedom. It destroys it. We're now seeing laws shaped by that same thinking. Bans on abortion, attacks on LGBTQ+ rights, and science being replaced with dogma in classrooms. The data is clear. Abstinence-only education doesn't work, and teaching creationism isn't education, it's indoctrination. Yet billions of tax dollars still fund religious schools pushing those views. The truth is, when government bends to religion, everyone loses. Believers and non-believers alike. The founders built a secular nation for a reason, to protect us from this exact kind of moral dictatorship. Faith should guide personal life, not public policy. Because once religion controls politics, reason stops leading the way.
Thank you very much, Professor Gordon.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. I am by training a historian of the early modern period with a particular interest in the Reformation, and just to pick up on some of the comments already, it likewise is a world in which politics and religion cannot be separated, and it certainly wasn't in their mind. And one of the things that I think is significant about the Reformation was that it brought a new way of thinking about the relationship between the temporal powers, spiritual powers, and the way in which the Reformation was in itself inherently not only political, in the sense that the reformers decided very early on that what had to happen was that if there was to be any chance of success, the reform of Christianity had to be tied to political authority. So right from its inception, the Protestant Reformation was inherently political. But what they understood by this political was the kind of the coterminous that the body of the faithful of the church was that of the state. But very quickly, and I'll just make a broad story very short, it became a movement that in many ways ate its own principles, that the Protestant churches, having emerged as a movement of rebellion, as resistance against medieval Catholicism, very quickly instituted itself and began to practice very much many of the things in which it had reacted. Violence, it was putting persecution, it was putting dissent to dissenters to death very quickly after the implementation of the Reformation. So this is a subject that interests me very much as a historian of the pre-modern world, is the very sort of fluid relationship between religion and politics, and what have been some of the consequences of that, particularly through the Reformation, the growth of religious diversity, the fragmentation of the Reformation into many different religious movements, which created quite questions of coexistence. How do you deal with difference in terms of religion within political bodies? This is, by the 17th century, is a central question. Starts to raise issues of toleration. John Locke and some of the early thinkers about this. I'm not saying there's a linear development, but these are the questions of religion and pluralism are very important. And I think that's actually a helpful thing for us to reflect on in our contemporary discussions. I am a practicing Christian of the Reformed tradition, a kind of progressive perspective that sees very much engagement in the world in terms of, and some of the things that have already been mentioned, social reform, social justice, questions that are very important to us. I take the view that religious communities make a very significant contribution to our society. Not, and I would say we no longer, just by trappings, live in Christian societies in the West. Christianity in many ways has been decentered, which I would say is a good thing, but it has to move itself away from a position of privilege at the head of the table to take its place in a broader community of religious communities and non-religious communities, in offering something which I think can make a significant contribution to our society. Not from, as I say, a place of domination, of privilege or power, but as communities who are actively engaged in a whole range of activities that are of enormous social benefit. So I'm very keen to engage in this conversation in ways in which I think religious communities make a significant contribution to society.
Thank you very much, Professor Gordon. Last but not least, Dr. Freud-Kandel.
Thank you. It's lovely to have Locke and tolerance referenced, because my interest in this topic is primarily in terms of my background is in theology and the study in particular of the Jewish community in Britain and the pathways of resettlement that the Jewish community has navigated, in which undoubtedly the role of tolerance as a central defining principle in the British political system played an incredibly important role in the different ways, the different pathways in which Jews found a place within British society. Having said that, my particular interest in examining that journey of the Jewish community in Britain entails understanding and examining the influence that an established church has precisely had on the opportunities that minority religious groups were able to enjoy in a British context. And there, as I say, the influence of Lockean toleration in combination with the role of an established church in the way in which it played out in an English context was incredibly important, on the one hand in a very positive way, in enabling Jews in Britain, in a very notable contrast to the experiences of Jews, for example, in continental Europe, from having to undergo a process of having to explain away and their role, their acceptability within British society. The notion of tolerance in an established society in Britain meant that Jews in a British context were discriminated against in terms of being non-Anglican, but they were not discriminated against as Jews per se, and that significantly altered their experience. But having said that this was a positive on some level, there is a flip side to that. And Bill Williams is a social historian who coined the term the anti-Semitism of tolerance to characterize the Jewish experience in Britain. What does that mean? It means that the whole premise of tolerance is that there is one correct view, and that is Anglicanism in an English context. But within the parameters of that notion of tolerance, there is an acceptance of alternative views, albeit while not accepting them as fully ideal. So this anti-Semitism of tolerance impacts on the way in which the Jewish experience developed, leading the Jewish community in Britain precisely to construct institutions which in many ways can be seen to seek to offer parallels to the Church of England, because that was the way in which Jews in Britain felt that they had to seek to find a pathway to being fully accepted. And so that's why we see the emergence of centralized institutions as critical to the formation of the Jewish community in Britain, often at the expense of creativity within the community, because the emphasis is on creating umbrella bodies that can provide parallels to Anglican structures. But by creating these umbrella bodies, you focus on that which everyone shares rather than creating a space in which to articulate alternative voices. And so those are my sort of primary interests in terms of the interrelationships between church and state, religion and politics, the way in which on the one hand it can be incredibly beneficial, but on the other hand in terms of the very severe challenges it poses. But I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Professor Gordon reminded us that the Reformation started as a rebellion against religious power, but quickly became another form of control. That cycle of faith movements rising against oppression only to become oppressive themselves is a pattern we've seen for centuries. Once religion and politics merge, power corrupts both. The church used to burn heretics. Now it simply legislates morality. The method changed, but the mindset didn't. Even Gordon admits that Christianity in the West has lost its privileged seat at the table, and that's progress. True equality begins when no faith claims authority over others. Religion can still do good, but only when it operates from compassion, not dominance. Dr. Freud Kandel's analysis of tolerance in Britain reveals the same tension. Tolerance sounds fair, but as she explained, it was really permission granted by those in power, an acceptance that still implied inferiority. Jews were allowed to exist, not to belong. That's not equality, that's control dressed up as kindness. History shows that mixing religion with politics always creates insiders and outsiders. The only lasting solution is a secular one, where belief is personal and the law belongs to everyone equally. So here's the question. In a world still divided by belief, can we finally build societies that value truth and empathy over ancient authority? If you found this discussion thought-provoking, hit like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into religion, history, and reason.
Picking and choosing in the space of possible experience, would you grant that there are experiences you haven't had and you don't know what you're missing?
Yes, in terms of what I would, if experiencing those, subjectively enjoy, sure.
Or there are experiences that are available to people and, other conscious minds, but they're not available to you given how you are, right? So you might not have the talent required to get there or the genes required to get you there. Or
absolutely, no problem with that.
Okay, so the landscape of possible experience extends what you currently know or even can know, right? And that's true of every person
absolutely,
like you. And now we're saying boo at each other in that context.
And this landscape we're talking about is a landscape of experiences, either possible or actual, which so that now this new pleasure opens up to me and I can experience it. What would I do? I'd look at that pill and I'd go, yeah, sounds great, awesome. And I'd take the pill just because I would prefer to have that preference. It's a second order preference, right? But there's still no space here into which has entered a concept of like moral prescription, of goodness, of ought. I'm still just in this world where there are experiences I prefer and I use my scientific analysis of the world to achieve those. And when something comes along that allows me to really radically improve that feeling of subjective preference, hell yeah, use all the science you can get to give me those pills.
Right.
But still no moral judgments here, right?
Well, there are potentially, but they might not be necessary. I mean, as long as you're going to concede that you might not know what you're missing, if you might not know how good life could be if you only made certain changes to yourself or to your thinking.
Going to get me what I want and which things aren't, so I start acting in accordance. Yeah. Then we all get together, and because it's going to be good for me if I work with this person, we work together and we start developing maybe this pill, and then somebody comes over on a boat and says, hey, there's this great thing that you don't even know that you're missing, give it a go. And I'm so open-minded that I'm like, yeah, sounds awesome. And the pleasures are just increasing and increasing all the time. And again, like the end, end scene, story's over. That's the picture for me.
Right.
Because if it is the case that there are in fact moral values in the world, like there is this thing called objective moral truth. The picture I've just painted, as far as I can see, doesn't contain it. So
I
what's
think it does.
wrong about that picture? Where's it gone wrong?
No, the more we fill in the blank spots in that picture, the more I think we get everything we could conceivably want by any talk about right and wrong, good and evil. So I mean, just give yourself a desert island and maybe add another person. So you're Adam and Eve, right? And you're building the world.
Change and all that, but I'm broadly attracted to this view that when we make ethical statements or pronouncements, we're essentially just expressing emotions at each other. And so when I say that murder is wrong, I'm sort of expressing some kind of distaste, or I'm expressing something akin to saying, don't do that, which is just like a command. It doesn't have any truth value. It's not even subjectively true or false. It's just like a command or an expression. And so if that's the case, then this sort of ethical talk is completely different to the picture that you're painting. And so,
no, not really. I can translate some of that into the picture I'm painting, because again, it sounds like to say that it's just a statement about the way we feel or might feel.
Well, it's not. To be clear, it's not a statement about how we feel. It is the expression of the feeling. So the mistake that's often made with the motivism is, when I say murder is wrong, I'm not saying something like, I don't like murder, or I feel bad towards murder, because that can be true and false. As we were discussing earlier, it can be true that I don't like murder. It's the expression of the dislike to the murder. So A.R. famously has it as just going, boo murder. That's not something that has any kind of truth value. And
boo doesn't, but you're granting that it is possible to not like murder, and that could be an objective state of a subjective system.
Yeah, that's no problem at all.
Yeah,
sure.
Okay.
And so I find myself in a world where I put my hand on a hot stove, and when I do, I go, I don't like that. And it's objectively true that I don't like that. Cool. And so I look around the world, and there are certain experiences that are going to make me suffer and some that are not. And so I pick the ones that don't make me suffer because I prefer them. And that's it, man. That's the story.
Okay, well, let's build from there. So that's you as the emotivist, picking and choosing in the space of possible experience. Would you grant that there are experiences you haven't had and you don't know what you're missing?
Yes, in terms of what I would, if experiencing those, subjectively enjoy. Sure.
Right. So, and it might be, there are circumstances where, or there are experiences that are available to people and, other conscious minds, but they're not available to you given how you are, right? So you might not have the talent required to get there, or the genes required to get you there. Or
absolutely. Yeah, no problem with that.
Okay. So the landscape of possible experience extends what you currently know or even can know, right? And that's true of every person like you. And then now we're saying boo at each other in that context.
And this landscape we're talking about is a landscape of experiences, either possible or actual, which if I were to experience them, I would go, yay. I'd go, yeah, sure, great.
But the yay, the thumbs up and thumbs down can be increasingly strident, right? I mean, there are experiences that are so good.
Absolutely.
That you'll have the experience of everything that's happened up to me, up to this moment in my life, it was comparatively worthless compared to this experience that I'm now having.
Sure.
Right? And obviously the opposite is the case. So what do you make of the fact that these experiences exist, right? And they're radically different, and that there are right and wrong answers with respect to how to get from one to the other. It's not, you don't randomly get just hurled toward one or the other.
Sure.
There are, at every level that we can understand ourselves scientifically, from the genome on up, so genetics and neuroscience and psychology and sociology, if that were actually a science, economic systems, everything, every contribution to a possible change in the character of our experience can be more or less well understood.
Absolutely.
Rationally.
Yeah, no problem with that either.
Okay. So all those converging lines of fact-based discussion can be brought to bear on this navigation problem.
Yeah.
Right.
So because I've got this subjective preference to reach this peak, I can use all of the scientific resources available to me to go and reach.
Alex O'Connor defends emotivism. When we say murder is wrong, we're not stating truth, but expressing emotion, like booing at a match. That view, taken from A.J. Ayer and C.L. Stevenson, reduces ethics to noise. But Sam Harris dismantles it. Morality, he argues, is rooted in facts about human well-being, not in preferences disguised as principles. The evidence is overwhelming. The World Happiness Report shows that societies with lower corruption, stronger institutions, and higher social trust consistently report greater life satisfaction. Neuroscience proves that poverty and violence alter brain function, impairing learning and shortening lives. Economic studies demonstrate that inequality and instability directly erode health and social cohesion. These are not opinions, they are measurable realities. History reinforces Harris's case. The documented decline of homicide, slavery, and torture, alongside rising literacy and falling child mortality, tracks with the growth of secular governance, science, and human rights. Flourishing increased not because people shouted louder boos and yays, but because real conditions changed. Harris's point is stark. Morality is not emotion. It is a domain of truth, grounded in the facts of what helps or harms conscious beings.
Other element to this, which is you've got your preference weights such as they are now. You got the factory settings, but you didn't pick your parents, you didn't pick your genes, you didn't pick the factory, you didn't pick your culture and the world into which you were born, and you've been tuned up by forces beyond your control.
Yep.
Now we have something like a completed science of the mind, and you can actually change your preferences.
Okay.
Right. And there's this additional question of whether you should do that, whether that would be a good thing to do, but good as measured by what?
Well, in my universe, we don't have terms like good yet. That hasn't entered into the
so
picture.
You'll just say boo differently if we change those weights, right?
So let's say like somebody offers me the opportunity to take a pill, and let's say that in this world I don't really like music that much,
right?
So I don't really care for it, whatever, and I can take a pill that's suddenly going to turn me into this great music lover, where I'm going to experience this brand new joy. And although right now my preference isn't to enjoy music, so it doesn't seem to matter to me, I can change my preferences so that now this new pleasure opens up to me and I can experience it. What would I do? I'd look at that pill and I'd go, yeah, sounds great, awesome. And I'd take the pill just because I would prefer to have that preference. It's a second order preference, right? But there's still no space here into which has entered a concept of like moral prescription, of goodness, of ought. I'm still just in this world where there are experiences I prefer, and I use my scientific analysis of the world to achieve those. And when something comes along that allows me to really radically improve that feeling of subjective preference, hell yeah, use all the science you can get to give me those pills.
Right.
But still no moral judgments here, right?
Well, there are potentially, but they might not be necessary. I mean, as long as you're going to concede that you might not know what you're missing, if you might not know how good life could be if you only made certain changes to yourself or to your thinking or to your culture, right? So we have a bunch of people like you who just don't want to talk about shoulds and oughts, right? And they never do. They just occasionally they say boo, but they don't think anything really hangs on it. And then if it could be an empirical fact about you and or people like you, that you're cognitively and emotionally and culturally and civilizationally closed to certain outcomes, which are available the moment you begin to play a little bit differently.
I'm not sure why those would be correlated, because like this idea that, there are experiences that are available to me that I don't even know what I'm missing.
Alex O'Connor argues that morality reduces to preference. Genetics, culture, and circumstance shape desires, and individuals can alter those desires with science. A pill that turns indifference to music into joy demonstrates that preferences can shift. But for O'Connor, the shift carries no moral weight. It is simply one preference replacing another. Sam Harris insists that morality is grounded in facts. Global health data shows the impact of concrete interventions. Access to clean water, sanitation, and vaccines has added over 20 years to global life expectancy in the last century. The World Bank records that extreme poverty dropped from 42% of the global population in 1981 to less than 10% today, with billions gaining access to education, housing, and opportunity. Neuroscience establishes that chronic stress from poverty and violence damages the brain, reducing memory and decision-making. Stable, educated environments strengthen cognitive development and improve well-being. History demonstrates the same pattern. The abolition of slavery ended a system that extracted labor through suffering and systematically erased human potential. Universal education expanded literacy and created societies capable of producing innovation at scale. Child mortality fell by over 60% since 1990, with millions of lives preserved through medicine and public health. These outcomes reshaped human existence and are documented in rising life satisfaction, creativity, and prosperity. The Enlightenment solidified this trajectory. Thinkers such as Hume, Spinoza, Voltaire, and Paine rejected divine command and rooted morality in reason, experience, and human welfare. Their work laid the foundation for modern rights, democracy, and secular institutions. These ideas produced measurable results: legal equality, scientific progress, and protections for individual autonomy. Institutions that resisted this shift preserved hierarchy and stagnation. Those that embraced it advanced the conditions of life on every front. Moral talk cannot be dismissed as noise when the conditions that allow humans to thrive are recorded with such precision. Civilizations that entrenched hierarchy limited the possibilities of their people. Scientific and social reforms altered those conditions, producing longer lives, healthier bodies, and minds capable of new achievements. These are not abstractions. They are empirical realities that define what it means for human beings to flourish. Harris places morality within this framework of truth. Questions of right and wrong are answered in the same way as questions of health or engineering, through evidence of what sustains or destroys human lives. The expansion of rights, the reduction of violence, and the preservation of life are not matters of opinion. They are achievements visible in data, history, and lived experience. Morality exists in the facts of human flourishing. To ignore this is to ignore the story of progress written into the last 2 centuries of human history.
Because if you said to me...
I'm still just on the... so again, I'm bracketing morality, the judgmental valence of that term for the purpose of this part of the conversation. I'm just saying that this descriptively, we're in kind of in the descriptive still value-laden landscape of this feels much, much better than this over here, which I never want to taste or touch again, right?
Crucially, just for clarity, I would say, in my view here, this is subjective value. These are
It's
subjectively valued.
These are objective facts about conscious systems.
Objective facts about how to best achieve what one subjectively values.
Yeah, but that turn doesn't do anything deflationary for me. It's just there are certain things that only exist as appearances in consciousness, right? That is their ontological status, right? There's no, even if we could later correlate them with other states of the physics of things, it's just, you can't conceptually reduce them. You can't be, there's no, the there is as conscious experiences, right? And I would say consciousness itself is one of those things. It's just that the only evidence for consciousness in this universe is as consciousness. Right, it's like there's no evidence in a brain that consciousness is a thing, right?
Okay. So is there something from this picture that we've been painting so far, where I've started in a world? I don't know why I'm imagining like I'm on some desert island, like we're starting from scratch, like the opening Minecraft game or something. I'm just here in this world, and there are things I prefer and things that I don't, and I start to learn scientifically through observation which things are going to get me what I want and which things aren't. So I start acting in accordance. Then we all get together, and because it's going to be good for me if I work with this person, we work together and we start developing maybe this pill, and then somebody comes over on a boat and says, hey, there's this great thing that you don't even know that you're missing, give it a go. And I'm so open-minded that I'm like, yeah, sounds awesome. And the pleasures are just increasing and increasing all the time. And again, like, the end, end scene, story's over. That's the picture for me.
Right.
What, because if it is the case that there are in fact moral values in the world, like there is this thing called objective moral truth. The picture I've just painted, as far as I can see, doesn't contain it. So
I
what's
think it
wrong
does.
about that picture? Where's it gone wrong?
No, the more we fill in the blank spots in that picture, the more I think we get everything we could conceivably want by any talk about right and wrong, good and evil. So I mean, just give yourself a desert island and maybe, add another person. So, you're Adam and Eve, right? And you're building the world anew, and then the question is, again, there's just two of you, and you have a navigation problem even there, right? And you would even have a navigation problem alone, but let's make it a little more complex. So there's two of you, and now the question is, how can you live so as to maximize everything that would be rewarding, good, yum yum. I want more of that.
Yeah, well, that is what they would in fact be doing, but there would be no.
Okay, but again, the crucial thing to admit is that there are right and wrong answers. That there are very real and very different possibilities in the space of all possible experience that can be actualized. There's some they couldn't possibly get to in a normal human lifespan because two people is just not enough to get you those things, right? But there's a range of right and more wrong answers open to them as to how to maximize what I'm calling their well-being, right? And the first answer is, they could both pick up large rocks and start smashing each other in the face, right? Now that would be a bad answer to this. It's a possible answer. It will give them some immediate feedback as to what life is like when you do that.
Be the wrong way to get their well-being.
Wrong way, and it just closes the door to other kinds of collaboration that we know are going to be objectively better if better means navigating away from the worst possible misery for everyone and towards something, or in your emotivist terms, fewer booze and more yums, the character of experience will change, and will change by virtue of whatever laws of nature underwrite the character of conscious experience, right? And
That's right.
Again, we can understand those laws at every level that we attempt to understand anything, from genetics on up.
Alex O'Connor describes morality as preference. People inherit their genes, their upbringing, and the culture that shapes them. Desires are formed by circumstance, and science can even alter those desires. A pill that turns indifference to music into joy only adds another layer of preference. In this picture, morality never enters the frame. Sam Harris answers with evidence. Human well-being is measurable. Global life expectancy rose from 31 years in 1900 to more than 73 today, driven by sanitation, vaccines, and nutrition. The World Bank shows extreme poverty fell from 42% of the world's population in 1981 to under 10%, moving billions into safer, healthier conditions. UNICEF reports that child mortality declined by almost 60% since 1990, saving more than 100 million young lives. Neuroscience demonstrates that poverty and violence alter brain function, while education and stability support healthier development. These outcomes are recorded in data, not dependent on anyone's personal taste. History carries the same record. The abolition of slavery freed millions from forced labor. Universal education expanded literacy, producing new knowledge and civic participation. Public health measures like clean water systems and vaccination campaigns ended epidemics that once killed millions. Enlightenment thinkers like Hume, Spinoza, and Paine placed human welfare at the center of political life, helping build institutions that still shape democratic society. When morality is dismissed as preference, these achievements lose their grounding, and atrocities like slavery or authoritarian rule can be excused as cultural taste. Harris points to this landscape as the substance of morality. Questions of right and wrong find their answers in the realities of human flourishing, not in abstractions. The record of progress is visible in falling mortality, rising literacy, and expanding opportunities. The evidence already speaks. Morality exists in the facts of human well-being, and the task is recognizing it. What do you think? Is religion essential for moral values, or can ethics and compassion stand on their own? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this sparked new ideas, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep the discussion alive.